Matt, the dynamic of the fan bases, the clash of the fan bases between, and I don't want to leave UCLA out of this, but we know what their place in history has been. And in recent history, they've been a pretty marginal program. They've got a ton of potential to do something different in the Big Ten, but it's the Pac-12 has been owned by USC. And even over the last 10 years, as I look at it, today and posting this video. Of course, they've only won one Pac-12 championship, but regardless, because of the legacy that's been established, the Pac-12 was owned by USC. Well, the Big Ten's been owned by Ohio State and Michigan. And to see, we're already seeing clashes of the fan bases because, there's a thought that, hey, USC is going to come in here. They've got a hotshot new coach who's proven some things in his first year. And of course, at Oklahoma, they've got some certain advantages in play. They certainly, during the Pete Carroll era, dominated the Big Ten when they would play in the Rose Bowl and in other matchups. Ohio State and Michigan, for as much as those fan bases hate the other, and we're speaking in sports terms, of course, there's maybe a certain comfort level in knowing if they're not going to be the king of the Big Ten and own the Big Ten. Well, on that particular year, that it still came down to the game, and the other one was the one who owns the Big Ten. But to see this USC come in from the West Coast, and it's just going to be fascinating to see who runs this conference on the field over the next 5, 10, 15 years and beyond.
It certainly will. And, that this is the frustrating thing. I mean, it's one of the frustrating things about USC losing the Pac-12 championship game to Utah. Because if USC had won, because TCU lost to Kansas State, if USC beats Utah, Pac-12 championship game, what do we have? We have a USC-Michigan Fiesta Bowl playoff semifinal. So we would have been able to have basically Rose Bowl East in Glendale instead of Pasadena in a playoff semifinal. That would have just been amazing. And I know a lot of the Michigan fans were, really, gearing up for that possibility. We would have had a grand old time here at the Voice of College Football. It didn't work out that way. So, yeah, it's a pretty irresistible talking point with Lincoln Riley coming into the Big Ten, going up against Jim Harbaugh and going up against Ohio State. And I think the really big variable, so USC still has one more year in the Pac-12. So we don't know what it's going to be like in 2024 when USC actually does make its way into the Big Ten. But we don't know if Ryan Day is going to be coaching Ohio State in 2024. And I think a lot of people on both sides of the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry will say if Ryan Day loses a third straight game to Harbaugh, then there's going to be a rethink from Ohio State's point of view and also from Ryan Day's point of view. Is he going to go to the NFL? Is he going to kick those tires? We're used to Jim Harbaugh NFL flirtations, but if Ryan Day loses a third straight game to Harbaugh and Michigan in 2023, the Ohio State coaching situation, it will definitely be up in the air. I'm not saying the change is definite, but it becomes a lot more possible. And so just imagine Lincoln Riley having more tenure at USC than Ohio State's coach in 2024. That scenario is in play. I'm not going to say it's likely, but it's in play. And so, we will obviously we have to see how the 2023 season plays out. But that game, the Ohio State Michigan game in 2023, it's in Ann Arbor. So and Michigan backed up the talk, won consecutive games this past year. So going into the season, you're probably thinking Michigan has the edge. I mean, not that means a whole lot because we'll see how the season unfolds, and it could be that Ohio State will be in a much better position by the time we get to Thanksgiving weekend in November. But right now, in it's speculation season, it's scheduled comparison season, and so right now you probably give the edge to Michigan just as a natural inclination, not as any sort of lock or guarantee. And so, if Michigan does beat Ryan Day a third straight time, wow, it's going to get very interesting in Columbus.
And for anybody outside of that rivalry, from a fan perspective, and especially on the Ohio State side, where in some ways it can be easily argued take it a little bit more seriously than even Michigan does. It seems ludicrous that a coach could be on the hot seat going uh, to college football playoffs and winning 11 games. But uh, you hear Ryan Day in his news conferences, he will verbalize that in kind of with a little angst that I understand what the deal is here. I've got to win every game. Like I heard him say that probably a handful of times this year. I understand 11-1 is not good enough here. like he knows. And so to Matt's point, whether Ohio State makes the decision or may it be Ryan Day, because he's a very accomplished coach and a bright young mind, will have other options to say, you know what, this is a bit much. This is just a bit ridiculous. I can go coach somewhere in the NFL or somewhere else in college and not quite have this pressure cooker of you have to win every game.
It's true. And, like Steve Spurrier was at the height of his powers at Florida in 2002. And like he was tired of the suffocating expectations. Like now it was the monster he built. So like in this case, this wasn't the monster Ryan Day built. This was what he inherited from Urban Meyer, who, also did great things at Florida. But like Steve Spurrier built the monster at Florida and he got tired of that. And the lure of the NFL was powerful for him. And I think in many ways, I think at the time, okay, yeah, the ball coach wants to see if he can drop the ball plays in the NFL. To that extent, like it was a cocky, egotistical coach, just wanting to see how he fit in the pros. But on another level, that decision always was mystifying in the sense that Spurrier was a college guy. Like he so relished beating Georgia, and he so relished needling
In
Tennessee.
Yeah.
And he was just so into those old grudges in the South. And so why would he go to the more buttoned down pro game? And here's a little story that I have about Spurrier. Like I didn't meet him, but like I was like just 50 feet away from him when the Redskins were at a Seattle hotel playing the Seahawks in 2002, 2003 when I lived in Seattle. And I could see him the 50 yards away or whatever, and he was miserable. Like you could tell the NFL had already beaten all the fun out of him. And that game, the Redskins won in Seattle. It was like 14-3, and they're just dumping the ball in the middle of the line because the Spurrier offense, the vision, it completely failed. And he was on the verge of losing the locker room. So he basically just had to run the ball so that his defense wouldn't commit a mutiny against him. It was like the politics of the NFL and just the larger realities of a pro locker room. It just snowballed, and you could just tell he was absolutely miserable. So, the idea that he would leave, his cherished Southern rivalries for the cold, business-like world of the NFL, that never really struck me as making sense. But with Ryan Day, I don't really get that same vibe. I don't think he's like he is a college guy. I think he, enjoyed being able to take the car keys from Urban Meyer, but now you can feel that the weight of this situation is crashing down on him. So much like Spurrier a couple decades ago, I do get the sense that when Ryan Day gets an opportunity, he gets an invitation, he gets an opening to go to the NFL, I do think he's going to leave. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be after 2023. I am saying that if he loses to Harbaugh, that can kind of speed up, accelerate that thought process. But I would say like in 3 to 4 years, at some point in the next 3 to 4 years, he will scratch that NFL itch.